of the screen where the code's unseen. Dagger flows like a stream, automating our dream. Bits and bytes align, testing every line. In the Daggerverse we climb, CI/CD in no time. Automate the plan with Dagger in your hand, testing every strand in this digital land. OpenUnison takes the stage, marks vision in the cage. Identity to engage, Kubernetes in the rage. Multi-tenants find their place in this coded space. Managing with grace, OpenUnison sets the pace. Automate the plan with Dagger in your hand, testing every strand in this digital land. Bits and bytes align, testing every line. In the Daggerverse we climb, CI/CD in no time. Automate the plan with Dagger in your hand, testing every strand in this digital land.
All right, let's try this. Attempt number, Mark's probably been keeping count, raging at me, 26, I think. I'm not sure what's happened. The streaming software that I use will not let me go to the pre-scheduled event, which is very frustrating. I tried everything that I could, even hooking up custom RTMP. That event just is not working. So apologies, everyone. Thank you for your patience. But I'm your host, David Flanagan. This is an episode of Rock Code Live where we take a look at really cool open source software in the cloud native ecosystem. And today we are continuing our mission to Daggerize open source projects. And today I'm going to be joined by Mark Bierstein, and we're going to Daggerize his open source project, OpenUnison. Hey, Mark, how are you? I mean, you've told me
Good. How you doing,
things
David?
now, right? All right, let's dive straight into it and not keep people waiting anymore.
Yeah, let's
do
do
quick
it.
TLDR. Who are you, what you've been up to, and what is OpenUnison, please?
So Mark Bierstein, CTO at Tremolo Security. I'm the author of OpenUnison. OpenUnison does authentication, authorization, namespace as a service. Might know me from talking about Kubernetes or helping people out in Slack. I am also the co-author of Kubernetes, an enterprise guide, first and second edition, the third edition next month. So keep an eye on Amazon. Great stuff. GitLab, OPA, Gatekeeper, OpenSearch, Vault, vCluster, Pulumi. It's it's a big update. So even if you read one of the previous updates, you're going to want this one too. So yeah, I'll end it there.
And after today's session, you're going to be adding the Dagger chapter, right?
My publishers will murder me in my sleep if I try to add any more to this book. So that we'll hold that one to the fourth edition.
All right, no problem. Okay, so today's mission is we're going to take your project OpenUnison, which is a Kubernetes native identity management multi-tenancy kind of bits and pieces software. It's written in Java. Yep. It's very cool. We've done a whole session on this before. Feel free to go to rockcode.live and just search for OpenUnison and you will find that demo. Today, what we're going to do is use Dagger to provision an ephemeral Kubernetes cluster. We're going to deploy OpenUnison to it with its Helm chart. And then we're going to start modifying some of those values in the Helm chart, which modifies the deployment in some way. And we're going to run tests against it. We're going to build assertions all inside of our Dagger pipeline. Something that I feel you will find infinitely valuable, I hope, with your project and testing it. And we're going to show everyone how to do it live, as they're now aware, 22 minutes in, and we've been talking for less than 3. So I'm so stressed.
I know I'm excited because I've never, I conceptually know what Dagger is, But I've never used it, so this is going to be a lot of fun for me. I get to learn something.
Awesome. Well, I am happy to be your muse and guide for today, which is now the third time I've said that. So anyway. And if you didn't hear all of that custom song at the start, I'm going to upload them later. Mark has now heard it 14 times. So here's my screen. I have the OpenUnison website here. So if people want to learn more, you can check out openunison.github.io. It also has everything that we need to understand how to deploy it, although I do have Vue. So we're probably not going to need to docs that much, right?
I'm here so you can ridicule how bad the documentation is.
That is not today's mission, don't you worry. What else do we have here? We have the Tremolo Security OpenUnison repository. So if you want to contribute to the code, everything is here and open source. It is Java, I warn you. And that's the only Java pop I'm going to take today, I promise. I'm not going to
I'll take it right on the chest. You can try and land those body blows against Java. I'll take those all day.
I've got to be honest. I mean, Java these days is much better in container-based applications. Like if you went back 5 years, I'd say don't do it ever. I think now it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get into that later. We also have the Dagger verse here. We're going to use some pre-existing modules for today's. We're not going to reinvent the wheel like we did in the last session. And we also have the Dagger documentation should we need it. So we are all set, we are all prepped, and we are good to start building some Dagger code. So here's my terminal. I've already cloned the OpenUnison repository. And we're going to create a new Dagger module. Is that transparency really annoying?
No, I'm not sure why you're starting in the OpenUnison.
Is that not where the Helm chart is?
No, so
No.
The actual Helm charts are github.com/OpenUnison/Helm charts. Do I have that right? Yes. So here are the Helm charts. No, I lost you. Where'd you go? Don't leave me. Here we go. Private chat. I'm going to send that to you. Yeah, so we broke up the Helm chart. So we have customers that run on Kubernetes. We also have a lot of customers that run in kind of typical legacy VM IT infrastructure. So we decided to break it up a little bit. So what you were, the actual OpenUnison GitHub repo has the source code for how OpenUnison works, like it's that base platform, but the Helm charts are how everything gets deployed.
I'm going to remove that opacity because it's going to, I mean, it works for me, but I'm worried that it's just going to look absolutely dreadful for everyone else.
You mean on the terminal?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little distracting.
Yeah.
At first I thought it was pretty cool because I could see the documentation behind it, but with all the text, it's a little distracting.
There we go. Okay. So we have the Helm charts. Yeah, this is the Helm chart. So what are we deploying first? What are we deploying?
So the way that we like to deploy, so OpenUnison, when you deploy OpenUnison, just standard, like I'm scaling up a new cluster, I want to deploy it. We have an executable called OU control. That's really just 3 Helm charts and a trench code. The problem with using that binary is that now you have to import that binary, right? And so if you're using a CI/CD system or some kind of automation system, you want something that's a little more native, and Helm is native to everything, right? So there are 4 charts I think we need to deploy with in this mechanism. And the reason why I say there are 4 charts. So the first chart you deploy is OpenUnison operator. That includes all of the CRDs that we use, the operator, and really that base platform. Then we deploy, Orchestra. And so that actually deploys OpenUnison. So think of that as your platform. That's, OpenUnison is kind of a blank slate for identity-based applications. You create your application by assembling a bunch of CRDs in YAML. That's what Orchestra Login Portal is. So when you go to log into your cluster and you see the badge for the dashboard and you see the badge for your token and any other applications that you integrate, that's coming from the Orchestra Login Portal chart. Finally, since we're using K3s and it's a managed cluster, if you're going to actually SSO into the cluster, which ultimately that's what OpenUnison is for, you're then going to deploy the Orchestra Kubo ADC proxy. The good thing is this all uses one YAML file. It's just the reason why we break it up is to make it a little easier to manage. And then especially with integration systems, because there's a lot going on with Helm, you can tell Helm, hey, wait for the pods to finish. Wait for all the jobs to finish. And in the OU control binary, we kind of cheat a little because we don't wait for all the pods to finish before we move on to the next one because we know when we're at a point to move on. But any kind of IAC tool, that doesn't really work super well. So we added a couple of flags to be able to say, okay, we're going to make sure that we're not going to be done with this Helm chart until everything is rolled out. So that way the IAC tools have something to key off of.
Okay. So let's just start making some progress on this. I think there's value to both routes here. Let's start with deploying with the Helm route, but using OU control, I don't think it's going to be that difficult either. So we can also do that. But first we have to create a new Dagger module. Now I'm not going to use Go today, as I was using that earlier. I'm going to stick with TypeScript just because it's what I'm more comfortable with. And anyone that watched the last one see me fighting with Python. Let's not fight with Python today.
Fighting with snakes is bad.
Yeah, I couldn't even format the code properly. It was awful. All right, so let's get this. And I'm just going to go check if we have a Helm here. We do. So we can actually use this module for Helm. And I know there's a lot, but this one does have a partner logo. So that to me says trusted. And I'm going to copy that installation. So I'll give you a bit of a TLDR on what Dagger is as well, just since you're not that familiar. It is an as-code tool for doing CI/CD style workflows. Essentially, builds a DAG of commands that you want to run. It all runs inside of containers, super cacheable, very robust, and a joy and a pleasure to work with. When we initialize a new Dagger project, because this is TypeScript, we're going to get a Dagger JSON here that just says this is where the Dagger code lives, and it's using the TypeScript SDK. And then inside of here, we have, let's call it Helm charts just because of the directory that we're in, but we now have 2 functions. These functions are written in TypeScript, obviously. And if we come over here, we can do Dagger functions list. And it'll tell us what functions we have available, and we can execute one. Now, looking at the code here, these are just wrapped in an annotation property on TypeScript that says, okay, this is something we want to expose as a function. It grabs a container image and runs a command. This one mounts a directory, sets a working directory, and runs a grep across it as well. So nice, fluent interface, makes building all of these different functions and pipelines super simple. And why did I get a no? I'm just being daft, aren't I? There we go. Trusted my history and I shouldn't have. So now we've got these two functions and we can do a Dagger call container echo. Now this is going to run the function. So what we expect to see here is that it pulls Alpine, executes echo, and it has a string argument called string arg. So the first one is going to fail and tell us that we need string arg. And I'll just say, hi, Mark. All good? That making sense to you?
Where's the container running? Like, is this running against the Kubernetes cluster? Is this running locally against your Docker daemon?
It's running locally against my Podman. So what actually happens is that Dagger spins up a build kit process with an API, and we're communicating with that build kit process, and then it is running other build kit layers and stuff behind the scenes.
Very cool.
So, yeah, it is very, very cool. So that's the quick baptism by fire there for understanding what we want to do. Now, we need Helm. So we could just say, if I'm pretty sure that is a Helm container image, or we could do Ubuntu 2004 where we run an apt update, apt install Helm. But Helm is actually a bit more convoluted because, unfortunately, it requires adding the official Kubernetes repository. It's not part of Ubuntu's native packaging. So we're not going to do that. And instead, we're going to just do a Dagger install for this one.
Riddle me this. I have a container that has Helm and OU control in it. Is it just easier to use that?
We can do it both ways. I think we're going to have time to experiment and have a bit of fun.
Okay.
But because we're installing this module right now, we might as well just take a look at what this is actually doing. So
okay.
We can come to this Go module. This is the other really cool thing about Dagger, right? Is that all these modules can be written in any of the supported SDKs, whether that be Go, TypeScript, Python. They just become available. There's Elixir, there's Rust. It's really cool how quickly that's all coming together.
But now I know why you like it so much. It's got Rust support.
It's got Rust support, I know. So here we can see that this Helm one exposes a whole bunch of different functions. So we've got like a version, we've got a package push, and we've got a test. So actually, I don't think this module really does what we want it to do because it doesn't allow us to just execute Helm commands. It seems to be more of a publishing Helm charts. So maybe I should have read the docs on it. So let's see what else we have. Here's a Helm one, but we can just use your image as well. Yeah, okay. That one would probably work. What's your image called?
Let me grab it for you.
And while we're doing that, I'll just show what did happen here. So we go to the terminal. We've added this function. Dagger does code gen behind the scenes, meaning that when we go enter our function here, we can do dag.helm. And we can see that package push stuff here. And we're getting code complete the entire time. It's telling us exactly what we want to do. And we can click into it and see that this takes a directory, a registry, and so forth. So all of this happens regardless of language. Dagger generates an SDK. So developing with it is working with a really strongly typed, nice API. And I love that too. So, right, you got an image for me?
Yeah, I'm just making sure I give you the right one.
Yeah, don't set me up for failure, please. Come on.
Yeah. Here.
So I'm just going to prepare for our first deploy step. We'll call this deploy OpenUnison.
Yeah, okay, let's go with this one. I don't think I've merged this in yet, but we need to do that.
Which returns a container.
Where's chat? All right, so here's the image, and this image has, it says vCluster because we originally built this as part of our vCluster onboarding process, but it includes vCluster, Helm, kube control, and OU control. So, all we really need to do to make this work is mount a values file and the couple of secrets we need and our kube control configuration.
Okay, awesome. So what I'm going to show you here is that first I changed the docs on this function. I took away all the parameters. I'm returning a container. That'll become important shortly. I'm now using your image, which hopefully isn't too large. And then I'm going to execute Helm version. And I think Helm might just be Helm version rather than dash.
I think you're right, yeah.
So now we can come back here and run Dagger functions, and we'll see how those small tweaks to the code change what we get back from this Dagger functions call. Marcos saying he's already tried your image and it works. Awesome. Thanks, man.
Sweet.
Now we're just waiting for it to pull. Oh, hopefully it's not too big. I hope you're not
I don't
shipping
think it's that big.
6 gig images. No, there we go. All right, so we've got our function called deploy OpenUnison with my documentation, which is obviously not that great, but it does come through
That is
here.
great. Hey, it's more documentation than I usually write.
So now we can call deploy OpenUnison. Now, let's remember that this returns a container, right? So if I run this, we're going to get output, but we're not really going to be able to understand it that well. It's going to be swallowed up because we haven't really requested anything back. So let's just give that a wee second to run.
Now, is this pulling the container every time, or has it got a caching? I haven't used Podman in a couple of years.
So it's now actually pulling the container, because when I ran Dagger functions, it was really just regenerating that SDK to list the functions for us. So now it's actually pulling that container. So it won't take too long. But yeah, they're all cached.
Streaming over the ocean.
So it pulls it once, yeah. I was going to say we'll do something else, but it's already finished. So as you can see, like, it's done stuff, but we don't have any idea what that stuff is. So we can then start to dive into that container. Now, there's 2 routes here when working with Dagger. I could then modify this and say, give me standard out, and change this to be a string, and then we'd see that output on the command line. But even if you don't want to go changing the API surface too much and just say, I'm happy with a container, we can actually just use the CLI and say, okay, give me the standard out for that container run. And there we go. We've now got Helm version 3.15.3 coming from your thing. In the same vein, we can modify this. And you said it was OU control. Let's see if it's got a version command.
Does it? I don't actually think it does. But you'll see an error, right?
Yeah, I'll see something. Marcos trying to get me to reveal some cool things of the Dagger workflow here. So you see this I'm pointing to my monitor, right? The bottom line, and I'll run it again, but we can actually ask it to zoom in and show us more details by using the plus and minus commands. And you can use arrow keys to jump between these like parallel tasks and a whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah, very, very cool CLI. All right, we actually got OU control is not a file or directory.
I wonder if it's just not in the path. Let's let me look at something here real quick.
Now, we also need a Kubernetes cluster. So while you do that, I'm going to come here and search for K3S. And Marcos, who's in the chat, has this community module. Not a partner, Marcos. You need to get your label in. We'll go to installation and we'll add this module. Now, we also get examples. So we can click on, there's no TypeScript, but I'll wing it. We've got a Go one here where we can just kind of see, this is roughly how we need this to work. Even though it's Go, I am going to copy it, drop it in here just as a reference. So now I can do async, ephemeral, K3S cluster. It's going to return a promise. And I'm going to return a service.
Oh, that's why. Okay. I've got it installed as a kube control plugin.
You got it as a plugin, so it's kube control, OU control.
Yeah.
That's all right.
And
Let's just
then,
confirm before we go any further, though, right? So
yeah,
kube
I'm just
control,
checking.
OUCTL. Just to help, let's see what we get. Go back to my code. So now this temporary cluster, this service, this function that provides the Kubernetes service that we need. What we'll want to do is get Dagger K3S. Wants a name. Okay, we'll just call it K3S. It takes options. Oh, we can even provide our own image. That's cool, we think. And what we want to do from the example here is get ourselves a server and start it. So what is server returning? A service. Okay, we're happy with just that, to be honest. Let's return await service. Is it import? Sweet. So let's see what our output says. No, kube control, OU control didn't. Oh, I spelled it wrong. Out control. I'm trying my best.
That's how you know it's a live stream. It's not scripted. Stuff doesn't work.
Sci-Fi Geeks Universe saying that is the most installed module. Yeah, I can imagine it's a pretty popular module. Definitely.
So this is going to run
Kubernetes in the
K3s in
world.
its own container inside of your pod?
Yeah, your old control is not working, but I'm not fussed. We had Helm, right? And that's what's important for me. Sorry,
Yeah,
can you
we'll
tell me,
figure something
what was that
out.
question again?
So OU control is, so kind is running in a container inside of your Podman. Is that how that's going to get launched?
I don't think it's actually running as a container, but we can run Podman ALS to see. Because it's all orchestrated by BuildKit, I don't think it's ever exposed to like your Docker containers list or your Podman containers list. It's not
Gotcha.
something, but I'll check. I've never actually done that before.
Yeah, curious.
All right, so we need Helm. We know that version works. Well, let's leave it at that. But what we need now is to run that Helm against a cluster. So we're going to say this dot ephemeral cluster, which gives us our service, and we can start that. And just call this const k3s equals fixing my code. Start does not exist. It just wants awaited. And now we have a promise service, which is fine. Sci-Fi Geeks is saying we need a verified flag. Yeah, a little blue checkbox or recircle. That's what we need of. All right. So going back to this Go example, once we've started it, we could check for errors, but that's more just a Go thing. And we want to get the endpoint so that we can actually connect our Helm cluster up to it. So we can say endpoint equals K3S endpoint, and then we can provide the port and stuff that we need. So I'm just leaning into this Go example that Marcos has already done, which is port 80 on scheme HTTP. And this gives us...
Is this endpoint for the API server that K3s is running on? Like what's that?
Yes, yeah. It's we can point our Helm to this endpoint and run.
Interesting. I didn't even know you could use K3s with port 80.
Sorry? You didn't know?
I didn't know that K3 supported, because I didn't think the API server supported unencrypted connections anymore.
Yeah, we might have to pull out the kube config actually, but we'll get there. Now, what we need to do here is say with service binding. So we're going to connect it to our service, which we called K3S. I'm assuming that's what this parameter here was the service name. So with service binding, yeah, we've got the alias. No, in fact, we don't need anything more. Well, once the service, okay. Yeah, it's a local alias. I'm being very silly. So we want this. And that's a promise. There we go. I bet you Marcos is just yelling at me right now. Oh, nice. Okay, so Marcos is actually exposing this. This is cool facts. I'm glad he's here. The port 80 is to access an Nginx deployment in the example, not the API server. The API server gets access to via the kube config. So,
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. So the K3s has a embedded Nginx in it. Cool. Well, that's good because we're going to need that.
yes. So let's remove our Go code. So let's just make sure this works. And we're not using our endpoint yet. Let's just comment it out. But make sure it's service binding and the service starts. So let's do a call. And Marcos is telling me to use the documentation.
You just got told to RTFM.
Yeah, funnily enough, you know that the original name of Rockload Live was RTFM. So way back in 2019. So yeah, long time ago.
Before the dark times.
Yes. So this is, I know this is Go code, but you know, this example, in fact, we'll look at it with the highlighting right here. So he is pulling Alpine Helm, which we could have done too. However, we have now pulled your code. And he's saying set kube config to here, and then he's mounting it. So the K3S module exposes this config, and we could have just clicked on the functions here to see that too, which we can then mount. And then we can just run our commands. So like this is the easiest K3S inside a container for Dagger I have ever seen in my life. So that is a testament to Marcos's work.
Amen.
So we can do. Oh, so that's interesting, Marcos. I'm glad you're in the chat, right? Because I'm doing a service binding. But because you've got the kube config, is it even needed the service binding? Because I'm assuming maybe not. But we do need a web file. We need to then store. And what was your path? You just stuck it in kube config. Yeah. I mean, I could just store this in temp. It's actually not that important. And we'll call this kube config. And the file that we're mounting is the conf. Oh, multiple cursors there. That was weird. And we're using K3S. So now I'm pulling out too many objects here. So I'm going to have to return. Let me refactor my code. Just return our K3S, which is K3S client. Is that the one that has the config? Yes. Okay. So now this has to change. So we're saying this, deploy an ephemeral cluster, and that gives us our K3S, which shouldn't be as a promise, so let's just await that. We then do our K3S server, which is going to be our K3S.server.start with a whole bunch of awaits here too. And this gives me my service, we probably don't need the endpoint then, just based on how this is working. But down here, we can say that we want the config. So this returns a file. This is a helper function that is reaching into, wow, it's using it in GraphQL. Cool, let's not look at that. Our service binding here is actually our server, even though I don't think we need the service binding. Yeah, Marcus has already confirmed that in the chat. Thank you very much. And he's saying that this doesn't need to be async, so that's one less wait. All right, so we don't need the service binding. We mount in the kube config. We can say with environment variable. And I know I'm going pretty fast here, so maybe I'll take a minute just to take questions. And we're saying that our kube config exists here.
And then Marcos actually added a with environment to update the path to make OU control work. If we want to add that in too.
Yeah, well, I don't think we're going to need it, but let's wait and see.
Okay.
So here we should be able to actually run kube control against our cluster. So I really want to see if this works, which I'm sure it will. Let's try it.
Rock on.
That's the wrong zoom.
So what is it doing now? It's firing up K3. Oh, there we go. And all that cool stuff.
Yeah, just maybe a bit too much info. All right, let's see. What do we get? So it's saying connection failed. So it wrote the kube config, but wasn't able to speak to the cluster.
It looks like right even before then you had a fatal with K3 starting up. It couldn't find C groups. Do you have C groups v2 enabled on your system?
I wonder if we need to use this endpoint function just to force the service to hang around. I wonder if this is just being stripped off by the DAG. So we've got far too many awaits here now. Let's just restart this. K3s server endpoint, where we want port 80 scheme HTTP. And this is promise. Marcus saying it could be a Podman issue. I mean, it very well could be, but if I need to switch to Docker, that's easy done. Let's see. Okay, so it tried to run kube control get pods this time. And it failed to open the permissions on that file. Okay, that's progress. So I think just calling the endpoint stops the service from being elided too early. But let's confirm that we can cat this, and I haven't made an arse of that, right? Does your image have cat?
It should. I mean, I know dog's in there.
I mean, I could probably just do this.
Yeah, it's running bash, so that should work.
I'm modifying the function.
If you're getting a permission denied, I mean, it looked like it was kube control that was unhappy, not...
No, it says open permission denied. Kube control was fine.
Well, right, but is that open coming from kube control? Because that's coming from kube control, because that's what would be opening that file, unless it's the... Because that's coming from inside the container, right?
Oh, the service failed that
Yeah,
time.
like yeah. Marcos thinks it might be a root issue. Are you running rootless?
I couldn't resolve the process cat. I don't think I am doing podman rootless, no. Okay, so let's take a look at web
Try.
file. We have these container ops. We can set the permissions to be very permissive.
Oh yeah.
So, I mean, we could just do 777. What user does your container run as? Do you know?
I probably should off the top of my head, but
I'm going to just, let's get inside of
it's
it,
not
right?
root. That I know for a fact.
Let's get inside. All right, so I've removed any command. We're just basically provisioning this container. So now, instead of standard out, let's do terminal, and let's have a wee poke around. Next, you'll be telling me there's no shell.
No, there's a shell in there. I'm not a big fan of distroless, to be honest. Docker file. It runs as user 431.
All right.
Yep.
We are the OpenUnison user, and our kubeconfig is coming in as root. So there's our issue. But we do have kube control. We definitely, well, yeah, I'm not going to autocomplete bash. Yeah. OU. No, there's no OpenUnison control. So, but that's the path problem, right? So we don't need to worry about that. So if I do chmod 777, do I have sudo?
No.
All right.
Oh, so it's a container, not a VM.
All right. So let's have a look at this web file. So we want to tweak the permissions. Now we could 777 it, but we can also set the owner. So let's try and be semi-good citizens and set the owner to 431. Oh, it wants a string. Okay, so OpenUnison. Now, if we run this again to get back into the terminal, we should be able to cat that file at least.
Okay, so you've added that terminal to the end, and that's what gets you in. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's a nice little debugging tool.
Yeah, I know it goes counter to current security dogma, but I will say that I think that a container without a shell is actually less secure than a container with a shell. Ooh, those permissions look good. Almost.
Oh, no, wait. Ah.
Temp Cooper. Oh. It's got the group as 431.
It's got the user. The user's right. It's just, I think that
right, but if you look at the group is supposed to be 433.
All right. Okay. Well, I'm not fussed about the group.
Well, right, but if you're on 640, if you've got it on 644 and you've got the group wrong, I think that might not work.
Yeah, I think the permissions are wrong because it wants an octal string.
Ah. Does it want it as like a string, not a number?
Well, I don't know. The example said 0600, which it doesn't even like. So that's so octal. This is. Okay, what number do we need? So 777 is octal. What's that in decimal? Can't believe I'm going to Google this. Compare 777 octal to decimal 511. Let's see if that's a bit nicer. And let's actually see what convert decimal. So I was doing 644 to octal. Oh, let's see if Google can do it. No. 1204. Right, and yeah, that might actually add up to what we were seeing. So let's try 511. Did I save? Marcos suggesting that there's a JavaScript octal syntax. Oh, it does work.
Interesting.
Oh, we'll try that next, but let's see the decimal approach works. I'm not even going to try and cat the file. I'm just going to run kube control YOLO style. Kube config temp kube config get pods.
If you have that env in there, you probably shouldn't even need the -- kube config.
No, you're right, yeah. So
Well,
we're in a
looks like you
position
can't get there
now
from here.
where I want to run that container ls. Yeah, you can't see. Yeah, you can't see the service containers. Okay. So now I'll leave that as octal. The converting it to decimal did work, so both are valid options. So now we need to work out why it's not quite working. So we can add our with exec back. We want to kube control get pods -a. Now I wonder if this is just a terminal debug thing. So let's run it as that and see if we get our list. Let's time it out.
So that IP 10.87, is that your network, or is that a Podman network? Is that what network is that?
We could probably do a console log endpoint. In fact, that's a string, right? Yeah. So that'll tell us what the endpoint for the K3S service is.
Yeah, Marcos
Marcos
is
is
saying that
saying-
K3s isn't starting.
All right. Let's switch to Docker,
When in doubt.
which might be relatively difficult to do on my Nexus machine. I've opened Next Home. We want NextOS, Podman. Yeah, I don't have rootless configured, but either way, false that, Docker, enable, true. And we'll do a fast rebuild, which means I shouldn't have to reboot. We also have the kind work from last week, so I can always just use that function, drop it straight in, and we'll get a very similar result.
We work great in kind. The entire, almost the entire book is written on top of kind. So
All right, it's installing Docker, starting the service.
Now, curious, what's your base OS? Is it Ubuntu? Is it Fedora?
Nexus.
Oh, it is Nexus.
It is. Oh, I'm on fish shell. How do you unalias on fish shell? PS. Trying to pull in Podman. I don't have Podman anymore. All right, we need to make one more change. This is where my Nexus is coming to bite me in the ass. So Docker can now just be Docker. Marco's saying it's either Podman or Nexus. Hey, leave my Nix out of this. All right. So if I just drop that shell, pop open a new one, Docker should be Docker. Sweet. Which means we will have to do just run Dagger functions. It should start the new. I thought it would pull a new image. Docker daemon. No, I can't remember my password. Hey. Why is that not working? Oh, I bet you it's going to be permissions now. I need to add myself to the Docker group. Like you shredding some evidence? What was that?
My standing desk, I was bringing it down. Figured I'd
I am
take
in
a
the
load
Docker
off.
Now I'm confused. Okay, sudo works. Not ideal. Functions. So now, unfortunately, we do have to wait for a new Dagger engine and pull down your image again, but it didn't take that long. So we'll give that a wee minute and see what happens. But I did do this with Podman and Kind before for the cargo project.
Cargo! Hey, Cat. Hope you're watching.
We can oh wait, that's the refactor branch. Oh, they merged it. Sweet. Okay, it's already on main. So if we do need a Kind cluster with Podman,
Can you zoom that in a while? That's really tiny text.
you're not allowed to see. Sorry, trade secret.
Ah!
All right. So just in case, we'll do we'll just call this a Kind cluster, which is a promise contain a service. And that's the Python code at least. So let's convert it. Where there was also the create Docker and Docker. Or Docker. Dag container from Docker downed with exposed port 2375 with exec. Docker D -- host TCP 2375 and true. I'm typing as quickly as I can go. So that gives us a Docker and Docker. Let's see how we're getting on over here. All right, okay. Let me make sure we've not busted the code to a point. Let's comment all this out and try OpenUnison again, just to see if this was a Podman issue. And then we've got our backup ready to go if we need to. So sudo dagger call unison. Wish I'd made a bigger cup of tea now. Gonna have to strap in for this episode. I hope you're not got dinner plans or anything.
No, I just scarfed down a protein bar. Sorry, I was on mute. I scarfed down a protein bar and make sure that the hanger monster didn't come out.
Let's zoom in on this. Let's see how K3S is getting on. Looks like it's just pulling the image. Oh, that's failing too, Marcos. Or is it okay now? Well, that might be okay. Let's pop up here so we can actually see the service one. So what's happened is that Dagger knows we're trying to use this as a service, so it's actually waiting for it to become healthy before continuing with the job. And now I think it's pulling your container. So we might actually be getting somewhere with the Docker approach. Oh, I think it worked. Okay. It was Podman. Podman!
I love the idea of Podman. It just never seems to... Yeah. It just never seems to work in the use case I need. I love the idea of it because I hate daemons, but I get to... Every time I try to switch to it, it doesn't last.
I'll spend some time debugging that later, and maybe I can contribute something to the module. But just to confirm, I never saw any standard out, and that's just because there's no resources. So let's try kube control get namespace. Right, okay.
Sweet.
So there was no output just because there was no resources. I possibly missed it, but we are able to query get namespaces, which means we don't need to go with the backup approach. Things are jamming as they were, which means we can now deploy our first Helm chart. Now, to do that, we're going to have to add the repository. So is that documented here?
Yeah, so go to the manual. So go to deploy the authentication portal.
Yeah.
Then over on the right, scroll down the bottom. And there's manual deployment.
All right, so we're going to create a namespace. I'll do the repository add first and the repo update. I'm going to do this all in line just now to get some progress on the road, and then we'll look at how we can refactor this code to be nicer, because we're building pipelines as code with Dagger, we can actually treat the code and our everything as code, which sounds so silly to say it, right? Treating code as code, but it is super important for actually just building stuff that can be composed and scaled and actually be enjoyable to write. So we're adding the repository. We'll run the Helm repository update, and then we're going to deploy the first one. Now I can just tell Helm to create that namespace, but of course I have Helm do it when we can do it.
So even before you call the Helm chart, though, we need a Helm file. We need a values file to pass in. Now, the operator won't matter because everything's default, so that's okay.
Okay.
So I guess okay. So you want to do the first chart first?
Will it be successful with no values?
Yeah, that one will be successful without any values.
Okay, so is there an example values file that we're going to need?
Yeah. So if you go to the top of this, if you go to the top, you click on prerequisites, scroll down a little bit. We can skip past the dashboard. So see where it says site specific, and then using OU control or manual. There's a download default values. So that's what we'll customize.
Okay, do you know what we're customizing?
So the short version is those first three options: OpenUnison host, dashboard host, and API server host.
Mm-hmm.
Those are going to be where it says apps.ou.tremolo.dev.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be the IP address. So in a production rollout, that would be the host names that you'd use for these apps, which would resolve to the IP address of your load balancer for your ingress controller. So since I don't think you have a DNS set up, I use nip.io for quick testing.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to do interface OpenUnison config, which has a network, which is an object, and then it has an OpenUnison host, which is a string, dashboard host, which is a string, and API server as a string. So now we have a type for that values file. I'll just comment this out. So we can create a TypeScript variable with this shape and write functions to do so, to the point where we can say, const get OpenUnison config is a function which needs the IP address. So we'll say IP address, which is a string, and it returns an OpenUnison config styled thing. Like so. What have I got wrong there? Oh, because this comes after. No. Oh, it's just saying we have to return a value.
Yeah.
So we could say return, and we got network. So yeah, I love this autocomplete. This is why I'm in this game. This is why I love doing everything as code. All right. And then we actually can just literally JSON stringify that or YAML stringify it when we mount it into the container. But what we want to do is make sure that we're using nip. Now, I don't remember the exact syntax for nip, but it's like IP address, and you have to replace the dots with a dash.
You don't have to replace the dots. I mean, I do that, but you don't have to.
All right, okay. So we can just say IP address.nip.io.
Well, you want to put a host name in front of it. So like API server would be like API.IP address.
Oh, right, okay.
On the other side of it.
Oh, yeah, because all right.
So you'd want it to be like API. Exactly. And then, like dashboard. They got to be 3 separate host names.
That's all right. We can do that. And OU.
Yep.
You happy?
Looks good to me.
Okay. So we create the namespace. Let's mount our file. So we'll say web file. Mev mounted file. We want to mount it to, I'm just going to call this helm values.yaml. And here, we have to provide the source. I don't think that can be just a string.
Well, and you want to get...
maybe I can do that. Maybe it was web file I want, and that allows me just to say, let's check. I'll work this out.
So are you grabbing the file that we have on the doc site?
Well, no, because that's the defaults, right?
Well, it's sort of. We actually don't. We use the default values because we try and maintain backwards compatibility. And so we've got customers that run older versions of the charts. So we tend not to force you to use the default. We don't rely on the default values. We say start with this and then customize it because it's going across multiple charts. So really what you want to do is either pull that in and custom and update. Yeah. What I generally do is I pull that in, I convert it to JSON, I make the updates to the JSON, and then I output it as YAML. Does that make sense?
Okay, we'll work it out. I'm trying to remember how I get a file, Marcos. You got an assist there? Creating a file from a string. I remember it's possible. Let's check the docs. File. There is a way. Maybe I just need to write it to a local file and pull it in. With new file. Thank you, Marcos. I just could not for the life of me get that. Okay. And that just wants a string, right? Yeah, string contents. Sweet. So that is going to be our Helm values, and then we need to convert that to YAML. What have we got? Where's it? Package JSON. Yeah. npm. Oh. I don't need to do it. Dagger will do it. Or will it need the node modules? I guess we're going to find out. Node.js struct or object. Marcus will be yelling at the screen now going, you should just have done a file. Why are you doing a fancy interface? All right. JS YAML. Cool. No, I'll need to do a node install so I can get the completion, or I could just copy an example. You'll do YAML.dump, I'm assuming. Yeah, okay. So, YAML.dump, and that's going to be our Helm values. And the import is GS YAML. Cool. So let's just make sure that works by using our terminal trick. So sudo dagger call terminal. Yeah, Marcos is smiling. That's not a happy smile. But I do think there's value. Honestly, this is just like being able to do something like that is what makes me happy with doing things as code, and then building functions and then sharing them and it all being composable and publishable to npm or whatever. Like that to me just makes things fun. Plus, you know what? I can test this now. We can write a function to put in wrong host names and stuff and build tests against it. There's just so much power in this as code approach.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we built OU Control in the first place was most of the issues that were being opened up about OpenUnison installs were either confusion about what the host names were supposed to be, or like missing certificates. And so one of the things we would do in like OU control is make sure that you don't have any of those host names get repeated, because people were trying to jam in the same host name to all three. I was like, no, they got to be different. So just having a way beyond just a template to be able to say, hey, here's some business logic, that's huge.
How can I just get the IP address? Host name. Which returns a promise.
And Marcos, all code is real code.
Whatever. Const hostname equals await K3S server hostname. Yeah, sure, string. Sweet. Yeah, I can't use the endpoint because I'd have to like regex out the port number and stuff. The hostname should just return what I expect. But we will confirm that. This gives me an object which now can be dumped. So we should be looking a bit better with this as real code. I mean, I misheard what you were saying there, Mark. He's slagging my code and saying it's not real code, but it is real code.
Okay.
I mean, it's not contrived because we're solving a real problem today, but you know, we're trying to move fast. All right, what a break.
We're breaking things.
I'm always breaking things. Invalid selection for terminal. Oh, it's saying no function deploy. Oh. Call function deploy. Not complete. Okay, what did I get wrong in my code? Oh wait, expected and equals. Oh, okay. It's because I changed that from an interface to a type. Because I thought that was what the first error was, and then realized that we weren't actually setting Helm values to anything. So good thing I'm paying attention. How are you enjoying the TypeScript, Mark, being a Java developer?
I've never actually used. I use a lot of JavaScript. I've never used TypeScript. I like it. It's. I like That's the one thing that drives me nuts about JavaScript is the lack of typing.
Yeah, TypeScript is pretty sweet. All right, look at that. I think we're cooking.
We're getting there. Although those host names aren't going to work. I don't think.
Yeah, that's oh.
Yeah, because if you send that to
it's IP
net.io,
address.
I don't think that's going to work. You need the IP
All right.
address. Yeah.
So we do need to use. I mean, we could always resolve it, but it would be nice just to get the IP address.
Is there a DNS function in Dagger? I guess it won't be DNS though, right?
Well, there is DNS, right? Like if I run this again.
Right, but isn't that hostname mounted? That hostname's probably mounted in your Docker container as a Etsy host. It's not.
Yeah. But I mean, we can still resolve that by running, let's see, here it is here, right? So we grab this and ping. It still resolves. And I don't have any commands to run though. What if you left me in this container?
Try just curl. That'll at least give you an IP address, even if it doesn't work.
Oh, no, it's. Well, you said there was Nginx in there. That actually should work, right? Let me think. Okay, so we got an IP address and our kube config. Now, this is going to be horrible. I mean, horrible.
Parse it out of there.
Yeah, totally. Unless Marcos could tell me how to get an IP address from this endpoint. I mean, is the endpoint going to be the IP, or is it going to be the host name too? Let's check that first, right? Before I go doing some really bad things.
You did a bad thing.
Let's see what the endpoint is, because maybe that's going to be a lot easier to parse than me regexing the kubeconfig. But I'm sure we can speak to the Dagger team and just get an IP address from this. No, the endpoint also appears to be all right. So we need to do this from the kubeconfig. So we can't do this yet because we need to be here. So we can kind of just say that's fine. But now we need to run a command inside this container. So we're going to get IP address, which is equal. And instead of returning this, we're going to assign it. So this is our setup Helm container. Horrible name. Horrible name.
It's better than X.
We could do another with exec where we're going to do a cat on temp kube config. Now I could probably actually have just a. Can we get it from kube control? Can you run kube control? Yeah, you can, right?
Okay, get nodes. VPN? No, I'm not on my VPN.
I'm just going to parse it. So, and then we can do set up Helm cluster, web new file, Helm values. So now we need our Helm values here, and it's actually going to be, I think that's in a way to get string and an IP address, and we're going to try and capture sub string. Nope. Find. Nope. Can't remember how to regex. Search. Can I do regex? No. Let's Google it. JS regex extract from string. You'll do. Okay, so what we want to get is scroll up. Do we still have that cat output? Yes, we want this. So we're regexing for this. That is server colon space HTTP S capture group. We can just do dot star because we have a deterministic end, which is the colon 6443. We can then say that our IP address is RX 1. Is there any functions on that to make sure I'm getting the right capture? No. Okay. Kube config. And here, IP address. So I need to make sure that's going to be a string. So this is returning. I need to work it. I should close that tab too quickly, didn't I? Where are you on? this returns this.
Yeah, Marcos is right. It should be the load balancer IP, not the. Oh, wait a minute. This is so much easier than we're making it.
Oh, help me.
Yeah, because get service and ingress nginx, right? So the service is going to be your ingress nginx controller. And then you're going to pipe that into, or you're going to do -o JSON, pipe that into JQ-R, and you're going to want dot spec dot because this particular service doesn't actually have a load balancer IP. Export kube config gets temp KOU. Yeah, that's fine. I'll get to this cluster. Who makes me use MFA for everything? Oh, right, never mind. Okay. Kget service, ingress, nginx, internet. Kget namespace. Kget namespace.
Yeah,
Service. Ingress.
I mean, this is the in cluster address, right? That's not the one we want.
No, you want
we
the
do want
load
the IP
balancer.
server. No, the way I'm doing it is right. We don't need the load balancer because if kube control is working, that's the IP address that we want.
Right, but the IP address is going to go to the load balancer for the nginx. So if there's a different interface that nginx is listening on, because that's what Marcos is saying is.
I'm going to keep going. I think I'm right. I'm not saying
I'm going to
you all
keep
are
going.
wrong.
That way, we got it in our back pocket. How about that?
So .0, that return a string.
Not space. Dot spec.
All right, let's see what we get with that.
Status? Oh, I see how it works.
I think Marcos is tapped out. He's like, fuck these guys.
There we go. JQ-R status dot ingress. No. Or no,
Okay,
dot load
my
balancer.
regex didn't match.
No. What? Oh, stupid camel case.
Shouldn't have trusted my first.
I'm super awesome at typing, by the way. I just want to point that out. Type for a living, and I never figured out how to touch type. Boom. Okay.
Yeah, my regex is good. Group 1.
I'm going to give you this just as a fallback if you need it. Because this gets me it directly from Kubernetes rather than having to parse
Let's
out.
just pull up a REPL. Next shell. JS.
Yeah, Marcos is saying you need the external IP.
No. Oh, wait, I'm passing in the wrong. Oh, my God. myself.
Don't hate yourself. That's what we're here for.
I mean, if I do it right, I say that rx.exec and pass in the right value,
That's an error. There you go.
then, in fact, I should assign that const a equals and then a 0. Oh, it should be A1. A1. But I can see it here. I wonder if the Rx just gets blown away. Right, so to var abc equals rx.exec with our server value. Yeah, okay, we're good. Okay, let's get back in that container now. This is gonna work. Shouldn't be getting too cocky, should I? Load container for my, okay, that's just my Dagger code being wrong. Container, that worked. We've weighted that, so that's fine. Helm value should be okay. We can just debug that if we need to. Oh, I'm not returning. There we go. So this is going to give me my terminal, and oh, it's close. There we go. Wrong index. Okay, I think that's fine. So let's try it, right? So what do we want to do now? We want to do a Helm deploy.
Right. So we're going to do, you'll look at the docs. OpenUnison.
The docs seem like so long ago.
I know.
All right, so
Deploying the authentication
manual.
portal, manual deployment. So it's going to be Helm install. Yep, except we're going to add 2 parameters to it. And I've got to remember what they are off the top of my head. Helm install.
-f temp helm values.
We're going to do Helm install.
Like that, right?
Wait. That's what we're going to do. Okay, so we're going to do --wait and --wait for jobs.
Yeah, okay, because we're doing this like that.
So it won't really matter for this one, but for consistency's sake, I think we should.
Yeah, and we could actually just wrap this Helm install into a function and make them
Yep.
happen all the time, right? But I want to see us get something running. I want to see OpenUnison, the operator, running in this cluster. That will make me happy.
So now this is starting a new K3s with each run, right?
It is indeed. So we're now waiting. So the helm install is running. Feeling pretty confident. Oh, no.
Now, is there something in the TUI to
Oh, no,
let you
that's right.
watch the output? Or
Sorry?
did you mess something up?
No, I thought this OU was an error, but I actually just called
Oh,
I actually called it that. So it's fine.
so wait, now I'm a little confused. Did we generate a new file just based on the couple of configs you made, or did you pull in? Oh, there's the operator. Yay!
Smashed it.
So can I see
Yeah, we
the values
generated.
file? I'm
Yeah.
just curious.
Helm.
Okay, so but we're gonna need. So what I was saying before is we've got to take this and merge it with that default values file from the website, from the documentation.
But if that's the defaults, this will just be merged with the defaults.
So that is not so the one that we have that we ask you to download and start with is actually not the default values from inside the chart
Gotcha.
because it caused us heartburn to go with that route.
All right, so let's do this then. I'm going to copy everything, but remove our stuff,
Yeah.
just so I can cheat and make this easy.
Okay.
I don't want to build this. I don't want to generate a massive TypeScript interface from all of that.
Right.
I wanted to do it to show off a little bit. So what we're going to do here is const default values equals dag dot with. Oh wait, I need to do that on a container. Let's go up here. Dot with. Dot with.
Well, so is there a function where you can pull that file in and then just update it, like pull it in, parse it as JSON, then make the updates, and then spit that out as YAML. So that way you still have your tight little interface because you're only customizing a couple of pieces. You don't need to.
Yeah, I'm just going to mount this straight in as default and then add 2Fs to our helm. I know this is horrible.
Okay.
I could read this from a disk. I could use fs.readFileSync.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
I just want to get us rocking. So
yeah.
So default values. So now we're applying those default values and then ours over the top with the customizations for the hosts. So
wait a minute, you can do 2-Fs?
Yeah.
I never knew that. I learned something new today. Well, I learned a lot of new things today, but I've never tried that with that.
I'm 99.9% sure you can do as many -Fs as you want. Yeah, can specify multiple.
Huh.
All right. So we've got.
That's going to be pretty cool if that works.
We've got 3 of these to do, right? So we've done the operator.
Yep.
Let's go back to the docs. So we've got the manual process at the bottom. We've done. So now we're doing orchestra, right?
Yep. Okay. So even before you do that, go back to your values.yaml, the big mess that you created, not the tight little interface. All right. So we're going to add. I got to look this one up for you because this is the part I don't have documented. If I can figure out where the hell. Okay, here we go. Onboard vCluster. So I need to go to. No, I don't want the help. I want OpenUnison deploy. And then you need to have a value. Enable wait for a job. All right, so you're going to add top level in that particular.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be wait for
OpenUnison set.
job is true. So it's going to be top level in the. Nope, it'll be a top level. Don't even bother with this. Just go back to the big ugly one.
No.
I mean, I guess you could do it this way too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just this would be more of a constant. You're not gonna because you're running it from an IAC tool. You're always gonna
I know, but
do
this is
that, but
just.
you could do that too.
Okay, so our Helm install now changes. The second one is to install Orchestra.
Yep.
Orchestra. And everything else is the same, right?
Yep.
All right, what's next?
And then we're gonna do orchestra login portal.
Okay. And
Now we got
then
one more. We don't list
okay.
it here, but it's called
Oh,
where'd it go? GitHub. I had the code open. It is called. I'm digging through my Pulumi here. No, that's cluster management. We don't want cluster management. Orchestra kube OIDC proxy.
all right. Oh, I'm excited.
Me too, man. So now, is there something that you can do in the TUI to let us watch the standard outlogs of the container while it's daggering, while it's running?
Yeah, zoom right in and we'll get a bit of everything. All right, we're helming.
We're helming, we're helming, we're helming, we're helming. Now we don't actually have an authentication mechanism set up.
That's
So
okay. To be honest,
OpenUnison wouldn't really work, but you should be able to get to the test of checking the OIDC issuer. That part
yeah,
should work.
all I really want us to be able to do is to deploy it, which I think we've just done, and then be able to curl against an API endpoint and then
Yeah.
confirm a value, right? In fact, even where we are right now, if all these helms work and we've deployed OpenUnison, everything after that is child's play because you're just basically saying, okay, let's pull another image. Maybe it's like
Yep.
HTTP or maybe it's hurl.dev. We're throwing requests at the API server and we're just doing those assertions. Are we getting a HTTP 200? Are we getting, the right OIDC configured authentication methods, whatever? At that point, it's all on you. And I'm saying
Yeah.
you're the audience here, right? Hopefully what people have seen today is how this code is a little gnarly, right? We could maybe spend 5 minutes to tidy this up. But what we're doing is cool. Like, this is cool. We're then able to take our Helm value and type it. Now we can use Vitest, whatever it's called, and we can do a whole bunch of different comparisons based on our values file. We can encapsulate a lot of this Helm logic into a single function so that we're not repeating this over and over, because the only thing changing is what is the chart and what is the name of the release. That is it.
Right.
So we can codify all of that. We're in a really nice position. Plus, I mean, I wish we didn't have to do this, but we've now seen that we can reach into these service containers or the other containers and extrapolate information to then propagate that down into other steps. So there's a lot really cool things happening here, and we got an error. But it's your chart, I'm going to say. Orchestra failed.
Don't care about that. Pod, test, orchestra. Oh, so we actually do need to have some kind of authentication mechanism, or the testing pod will fail. So if you look at your config, let's just make our lives easy, even though it won't work. So we've got, see where it says SAML IDP underscore URL, and it's commented line 151 and 152.
Yep.
Just uncomment those for now. That'll get you past that. Yeah, because we build error checking in where we can.
How rude.
It really is, isn't it? We should talk to somebody about that.
All right. I mean, even if we take out the orchestra deployment, I'm not that fussed. We're still in a position where we've deployed a collection of Helm charts. We've taken advantage of TypeScript. We're using Dagger. We're using lots of parts of Dagger right now to show how this works. Like
Well, and like in a real world scenario, so we're deploying OpenUnison in its simplest use case here as a login portal. But what I find really interesting here is that let's take this to the namespace as a service example. You can build a lot of custom logic into OpenUnison. So like I've got customers where where there's logic in there to like integrate integrate charge codes into namespace creation to do chargeback and look back, and checking resource constraints to figure out if the quota meets some kind of line where a manual like being able to automate that testing for those more complex scenarios where you're just calling our API. That's a really cool use case to me that, we're not really doing yet, but we could.
Yeah. We've been in this Kubernetes landscape a while. And when it comes to testing Helm charts, the status quo right now is pretty much just to
Awful.
template it out and run conf tests against it, right? And do assertions against the generated Kubernetes manifest. There's not a lot that actually happens in cluster.
We're getting closer. New container.
Yeah, orchestra. I'm going to remove orchestra.
Well, if you remove orchestra, you won't have anything.
Oh, we have the operator. I mean, we've shown some stuff. We can still do assertions against the operator, so let's just do that. So the status quo for Helm testing right now is really just to generate that YAML, which means you lose access to hooks and jobs and all the stuff that they're doing in cluster. I've not seen a lot of people, if any, actually, I've not seen anyone deploy to like a kind and build assertions against it. I'm sure some people are doing it, but I would argue that this as code approach allows you to go a lot deeper and a lot more automation than what has previously been possible. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm looking at, so the way we automate our testing is we've got a QA cluster that, we use Git to do we use GitOps and Argo to do it, but we want to get into the habit of having these automated tests and to be able to say, okay, I want to run this against a cluster that has Nginx. I want to run this against a cluster that has Istio. I want to go through the same type of steps every time. So, I like the fact that I can spin up a K3's cluster and it'll talk to it as one option. But then I could also see saying, you know what, I'm going to mount in a virtual cluster that's got my baseline in it already. So I like that there's that flexibility in there, and that it's code.
Yeah. All right. Let's do
it's not code I have to recompile every 25 minutes.
Let's make this nicer, right? And this will be the last thing we do. I know we've went way over the time that we set aside for this, so I really am sorry, but I hope you're enjoying. Let's write a function. It's just called deploy Helm chart. This needs a chart, release name, chart name, and values, which is just an object. Any JavaScript object can be serialized. So this is going to return a promise container because we probably want to work with whatever we get back. And then the function itself can be blah, right? So let's do that. Oh, and we need to provide a yeah, let's provide the container. We could actually build up our own with Helm and use your image. But then we need the kube config and stuff. So just to make that a little bit easier, we're just going to say that we're going to pass in the container. So now we're going to say container, and it's just that code that we have. Only we're going to do some interpolation, which is here we want the release name, the chart name. We could add properties for namespace, for wait for jobs. In fact, let's even do that, right? Because we don't need to wait for jobs all the time. And we're now at a point where this should actually be a structure. So let's call this ops, Helm ops. I'm going to hate myself for making this more complex than I should for the last 5 minutes. However, wait for jobs.
We're programmers. Making it more complex is our job.
And wait. So there's two different waits. So let's take that. So if we have ops.wait, we do just wait, otherwise nothing. Ops.wait for jobs, nothing. That'll do. And we return back our container. Oh no, I've not made this async, so. Cool. This now means that this becomes, and we can't use the Fluent interface anymore because it's not attached to a container. Const c equals, look at type. And we can do, what did I call it? Helm, no. Deploy Helm chart, which takes a C, which takes a release, which takes a chart name, operator, which then takes our values. We've mounted them into the container already. So I was going to make that an object and actually do that. So let's come back to that in a second. And then the ops, where we say wait, true, wait for jobs, true. And then if we make this something that we can write over. So this disappears. So we're going to pass in our Helm values. Can I not redeclare? Even if I make it a
doing
let.
This isn't let redeclare, or let does it declare?
Well, I mean, maybe I should be doing var, right? Anyway, let's do it this way. So this now becomes no longer needed because we're going to do this in line down here with our values object. So with new file, temp helm values.yaml, and that is our yaml.dump. Values. So not the best refactoring, but really trying not to push us into that 2-hour mark for the stream. But you can see how this is a simple function that just makes this a lot easier.
Yep.
I don't need C1. We actually just want whatever it was called above. Yeah. Oh, set up Helm container. This now becomes a lot easier for us to then chain that together and say, okay, we need to deploy another chart. We can't do it because we didn't create a class. There are ways we could have made this fluent still. Let's see, we can now deploy as many charts as we want, and we've defined what that interface looks like. And I just think, again, treating this stuff as code enables so many different things. We could build classes where these are helper functions and give us our Fluent API to continue this, because our base layer is going to be a certain position, which is the OpenUnison container in this approach. And now we can test this as well, and we can test the end-to-end product based on everything that we've done. I'm calling it quits there, because that's been an absolute monster session. Let's pop back over here.
But I think we learned a lot, right? Like the goal wasn't to learn about OpenUnison. The goal was to learn about how do we take Dagger and do something really cool with it. And I think we accomplished the really cool, like being able to say launch a cluster, a K3s cluster, integrate with it, right? Pull in multiple configs in a reusable way.
Yep.
And test it all out. I mean, that's pretty cool. Like that ranks pretty high on my pretty cool meter. Patent.
Nice. All right. Well, I will continue to work on this off stream and put together some real assertions. What I will do is I will comment on this video on YouTube this time next week, hopefully, or earlier, with a link to the code and the actual build and the test cases. I'll probably use hurl.dev or something like that. It's a really cool text-based tool for making HTTP requests and assertions. And hopefully we can get this pushed towards the OpenUnison Helm charts repository as some fun test cases to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Mark, for joining me today and for kind of guiding me on the OpenUnison parts. I hope Dagger has piqued your interest and that you're going to venture further into the Daggerverse, literally and figuratively.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you to everyone who stuck with us throughout that. I know that was a very long session. I hope you found it useful. Let us know in the comments, and feel free to say thank you or you suck in the comment box as we say goodbye for today. But Mark, thank you again. I'll speak to you soon, and to everyone else, have a wonderful week. Bye.
Adios.
Late night, bug hunting with no end in sight. We're Code Academy in our veins, caffeine dreams and code remains. Debugging through the digital haze, lines of logic in endless arrays. Thanks for tuning in, it means a ton. With every compile or crash we fight on. Oh, keep running friends, keep pushing on. In this wired world where you belong, may your syntax be clean, your errors be few. Until next time, we'll be cheering for you. Build castles for ones and zeros. We stood tall like code heroes. For every bug squashed another plan. In this academy, you took a stand. Your journey's just begun, don't falter. Each algorithm like a sacred altar. From here to the future, every bite, forge ahead into the endless night. Oh, keep running friends, keep pushing on. In this wired world where you belong, may your syntax be clean, your errors be few. Until next time, we'll be cheering for you. Keep coding, friends, keep pushing on. In this wired world where you belong, may your syntax be clean, your